All right, for today's video review, we're going to be taking a look at Transformers Studio Series 86 Constructicon Scavenger. And yeah, this figure is pretty much exactly what I thought he was going to be, just kind of a downscaled, slightly re-engineered version of the Combiner Wars / Unite Warriors version of Scavenger. But, he's a neat little toy. And yeah, he is little. And again, I'm going to repeat this in every video of these guys, but that's my main complaint really about the Studio Series 86 Constructicons is just that I really preferred the scale of the Combiner Wars version. These guys just feel a little bit too small to scale with modern generations figures, but in and of itself, it's a fun little toy. And yeah, obviously turns into a little excavator here. It's a cute little mode. Doesn't have any rolling wheels or anything, so he pretty much just sits there. He's got, in terms of articulation in this mode, his scoop can bend here. It's just pegged on actually right here. So it has a swivel right there. There's a hinge right here at the elbow, I guess. And then there's a hinge at the scoop, which is not something that the Unite Warriors or Combiner Wars version had. So that's nice to see. But yeah, works pretty well. Other than that, this whole thing can't rotate or anything like that. He comes with this little gun here, which, it looks like the scavenger gun. Not a whole lot to say about it. In terms of storage, he does have this little peg right here, which corresponds to that port right there on the gun. So you could plug it in like that, or you could just use the 5mm port to plug it in there. And yeah, it's a gun attached to an excavator, so it looks kind of silly either way. And personally, I just kind of prefer to leave these little guns off to the side, but that is where it's supposed to go. In terms of comparisons in this mode, here he is with Studio Series with Kingdom side swipes. So you can see it looks like an average size Deluxe here, and as you can see, yeah, I don't think that scale really works. Just comparing the canopy section here with the car there, he's a little bit too small, but that's what they look like together. Here he is with Unite Warriors Scavenger, so you can see how downscaled this guy really is here. And yeah, even his canopy looks a little bit silly and small compared to these guys. That was always a problem I had with, this version too, but they pretty much kept the proportions the same with these guys, just the whole thing is scaled down. I'm sort of curious to see if some knockoff company is going to do an upscaled knockoff of these guys, because I do actually quite like the engineering on these guys. I love the way Devastator is looking so far. It's just a little bit smaller than I'd like it to be, so I'd be kind of interested if there was some sort of upscaled knockoff of these guys. But yeah, that's what they look like together. And here he is with our other Constructicons so far from Studio Series 86. And yeah, they're all looking good together, just one to go. And kind of interesting is that I was really expecting these two to be a partial of each other, but if you actually look at the treads here, the sculpting is actually different. I don't think that they actually share any parts, even though the legs work the same way. The parts are, generally shaped the same way, but I don't think that they actually share any parts with each other, which is kind of neat. I think that's partially due to the fact that, their legs end up kind of upside down from each other, so they couldn't keep the same exact sculpting. Otherwise, one of their wheels would have been on the wrong side, but it's kind of interesting. I was expecting those to be just partials of each other, and they weren't. But yeah, no, he looks good with all of them. But yeah, to get onto transformation, real quick, we'll just show off his combined mode here, because it's fairly easy to get to from the excavator mode. If you're at all familiar with the Combiner Wars version, it's pretty similar. I just want to take the scoop, fold it up like this, and then collapse this whole thing up. Take the treads and kind of spread them out to the side, just so you untab it from this section and take this whole piece, which takes this little purple panel in it with it, so that reveals actually the port for where it attaches to Devastator. And you fold this all down, and then you take this little purple panel and fold it up like that, and then just peg the treads back in, and then flip down this panel, and just like Bone Crusher, he's got that bit that kind of latches over itself like that. And I'll show off the full combined mode with the arm, actual actual forearm panel and everything like that once we get Mixmaster. But just for now, that's how that works. And then to continue on the transformation, obviously you just want to fold these bits away, and then this bit just folds back down where it was. You do kind of have to fold this down anyway, because then you need the clearance there, because if this was up, the hips would be in place, because he doesn't do that thing where like the hips detach like the Combiner Wars version did. But you need to leave them down like this, so you have the clearance to take the arms and then fold them out to the side and tab them into the body section just like that. Take the canopy, fold it to the back, and it'll actually lock into place there. And then you can take the arms and then click them up into place just like that, and then rotate out the hands. And then you kind of have to take this panel and just like fold it up like that, so you can take this section and just bring it back to where it was, and then fold that back down to complete the waist. And then just like Mixmaster, we just open up the toes here. The first thing that I noticed how these were not the same is that he doesn't have the little like extra heel support pieces, which I prefer because I don't even think Mixmaster would have needed those. And it just kind of breaks the tread illusion. And you leave that on his back. Personally, you can leave it like this. Personally, I like to fold the scoop up like that, so the whole thing sits a little bit more like flush in this mode, whereas you really can't do that without it getting in the way in the like combined mode, because the scoop kind of gets in the way of the elbow joint, so you do have to fold that up. But personally, that's how I prefer to do it for robot mode. And then you take this panel here, flip it open, flip open the head, and then close that back up, and there we have Scavenger in his robot mode. And yeah, it's a decent look. Like I said, he looks pretty similar to the Combiner Wars version, just has that kind of like, you know, stumpier kind of proportions since the legs don't extend anymore or anything like that. He's a little bit wider. He definitely has a very, very huge pelvis piece here. But other than that, I don't know. I feel like he wears these stumpier proportions a little bit better than Bone Crusher did, personally. Maybe I'm biased because Scavenger has always been my favorite Constructicon, but yeah, you know, I think it's pretty decent. In terms of articulation, his head is, I think it's on a ball joint. Yeah, it just the shape of it doesn't really get any wiggle, but pretty much just the swivel range, and then you can kind of bend it down a little bit. The shoulders here are on ball joints, very similar to how they were with the Combiner Wars version, so it can rotate all the way around, go out to the side. Elbows are on ball joints, which gives him a bicep swivel, 90 degrees of bend. His wrists can bend in. What's kind of interesting about his wrists is because they're clearly the purple plastic painted green for some reason. I guess that's just the way it fit on the tooling. So I'm a little bit worried about that chipping off eventually, but you know, whatever, not that big a deal. Like with the rest of them, he does not have a waist joint at all, which is, again, unfortunate, but with his transformation, it feels a little bit more justified with him. Hips are on ball joints, which can go forward and back and out to the side. He's got a thigh swivel. I have noticed that the thigh pieces here are like, you know, the lower thigh pieces are very clearly a lighter shade of purple than like the other bits of the leg there, just because of the different type of plastic that it is, which is, again, just a little bit more noticeable than I'd like it to be, but not that big a deal. His knees, just like with Bone Crusher, do click into place, which is kind of annoying, but they do get 90 degrees of bend there, and then the feet can tilt out to the side, and then you can kind of adjust the toes and the heels to, you know, fake forward or backward ankle tilts there. And then I guess if you want, you could also, you know, bring the scoop up over his back like a scorpion tail or something. I feel like that's kind of cool. But yeah, obviously we can give him his little weapon here, which he looks fine holding. And then in terms of storage, I mean, he does still have this little port back here, but it does kind of bump in the way of the scoop a little bit, but you can still put it on that way. You can also maybe put it into the, yeah, it does fit into the screw holes there, so you could just have it stored like that, which works a little bit better in my opinion. But yeah, in terms of comparisons in this mode, here he is again with Kingdom Sideswipe, so you can see what he looks like with an average size Deluxe there. Again, a little taller than he is. Here he is with Siege Megatron, so you can see what he looks like with him. Again, you know, the same thing I'm going to say with all these guys. He's a little bit smaller compared to Megatron than I'd like him to be, and he's definitely going to be a bit smaller compared to Studio Series Megatron, who's going to be a little bit bigger. So I don't know. I wish these guys were all a little bit bigger, but you've heard me say that a number of times. Here he is with Unite Warriors Scavenger, so you can see just how much smaller he is there. And yeah, I mean, proportionally, I feel like this is not as big of a downgrade as it was from Bone Crusher to Bone Crusher, whereas like I feel like both of these proportions for Scavenger work fine. I probably prefer the proportions on him a little bit, but yeah, you know, it's not as big of a noticeable leap there. But yeah, that's what they look like together. And then, of course, here he is with the other Constructicons that we've gotten so far. Again, 5 down, 1 to go. They're all looking pretty decent together, if not just a little bit small compared to everything else, in my opinion. But yeah, you can see, I feel like, he definitely has those stumpier proportions like Bone Crusher, but because his body is like less bulked out in the middle, I feel like he wears it just a little bit better. He looks a lot more proportionate, even though he definitely does have this like kind of huge pelvis piece. But I think that he looks pretty decent. In fact, they all look decent. I don't really mind these designs per se. It's just I wish they were a little bigger. So if they made some sort of, like knockoff that was larger, I might be all about that. But either way, before we get on to Mixmaster, who I have not gotten yet, so he should be coming in the mail pretty soon. That's pretty much all there is to say about him. So obviously we're getting close to being able to do the full combine mode here, and I'll show that off in its own video when we get Mixmaster. But as a toy in and of himself, I like Scavenger. He's simple, he's fun. There's nothing too crazy about him. He's just kind of a more like refined version of the Unite Warriors version. Just again, a little smaller than I'd like him to be. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to him. If you enjoy my videos, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. I do reviews every Tuesday and Thursday. And without further ado, here we have Transformers Studio Series 86 Constructicon Scavenger.